Hello and welcome to this video tutorial. My name is Paul Cairns and today I'll be showing you how to add grain to your photographic images. With digital cameras there is no grain. There is noise, but noise is something that most photographers are not looking to put into their photographs. But grain is something that was actually quite pleasant, and it was one of the few things that I really miss about film actually. With higher speed films you got more grain, and grain could add a lot to a picture, not just obviously texture, but can also add a dreamy effect, a mysterious effect. You know, it can add a lot to the actual image and give a certain feeling to an image. And it doesn't hurt that it adds texture as well, which gives a lot more depth to an image as well. So with digital cameras, you're not going to get that. I mean, your images can still look really beautiful, but they can lack that texture. So you can add this in Photoshop quite easily, and I'm going to show you how. So we'll begin by dragging the layers palette up, and we're going to start off with a new group. And I'm going to name the group grain, and I'm going to select a color for the group. It's a good habit to get into. That way when you're looking at your files and there's many layers, it makes it easier to find your files, find the layers that you need to work on if you want to retweak them later on. Okay, so let's create a new layer, and we're going to go up to Edit, Fill, 50% Gray, and then select OK. Now go to Layers, and then select Overlay. That way it becomes transparent and you can see the picture. Alright, now we're going to duplicate it just by dragging into this little icon here, and rename the layers. So uppercase grain, double click, and then I'm going to go lowercase grain. The reason I'm doing this is we're going to actually create two layers of grain. One's going to be coarse grain, which is going to be this layer here, and on this layer we're going to do a finer grain. The reason for doing this is grain tends to be very, it's not uniform in size. It tends to be small bits, large bits, and it's also very random. So this does two things. It gives me the smaller grain and the larger grain, and we're going to combine them together, and that will make it also a lot more random, which will make it a lot more natural looking. So we'll begin with the large grain. We're going to go to Filter, go to Noise, Add Noise. We're going to add 15% Gaussian and make sure monochromatic is selected. Okay, press OK, and now the grain has been added. Now we're going to soften the grain, because grain is a texture, but it's not a sharp texture. It's actually a very soft texture. So Filter, Noise, Blur, Gaussian Blur, and we're going to about 0.9%. 9.9 pixels, and this is something you can play with. This is just a good starting point to work with. Okay, now hide that layer, select the other layer, and we're going to do the same thing, but we're going to do smaller numbers. So Noise, Add Noise, instead of 15 we're going to go 5. Again, Gaussian and monochromatic. Okay, and then Filter again, Blur, Gaussian, Blur, and this time I'm going to drop it down to 3. And that's not a fixed number. You can play around with it, but it's a good starting point, as I said with the other one. Now we're going to zoom in, and going up to the area that I think is going to benefit most from this, which is here. Okay, now this is where we're going to play with the grain to change the opacity in order to affect how dense the grain is. Okay, so make sure you do this one layer at a time. This layer is selected now and is visible. The other layer is not selected and is not visible. Going to dial it down to 0, and hang on a second, drop this down a bit more. Okay, now I'm going to start adding in 10% increments by pressing Shift on my keyboard and using my mouse wheel and mouse wheeling up until I get to a grain that I think looks pleasing to me. Now remember, I'm working with the fine grain right now. When you get to a grain that you think looks good, then I would recommend dialing it down 10% after that. So I'm going to stick with about 50% with this one. Now hide that layer and then select the other layer and unhide it. And as you can see, the grain is a lot more coarse here. And when you're dealing with, let's say, a high ISO film, you're going to have a lot more grain looking like this. Like this would be like a 1600 film pushed to maybe 6400 or you know, around that area. So it can be very coarse like this, but we're going to dial it down now. Same way, start off at 0 and then start adding it. Right now it looks like about 400 ASA with a nice developer, and that's like a maybe higher ISO right now, maybe closer to 1600 ISO right now. So I'm going to go down to about 50. Now add the other grain, so toggle that on, and now you can see how it looks. And you can see that this area here, which is the area that was the most concern for me, the tones have now evened out completely, and it's quite lovely. I'm going to toggle it off and on, and you can see the difference. Okay, now I'm going to zoom out a bit. Okay. Now you can also adjust the opacity of the actual set itself. So you're dealing with the groups, and here we're going to deal with just the group. We're going to hide the layers within the group, and you can toggle it off and on here, and then up here you can actually dial back the grain, and 90 looks good to me, so I'm just going to leave it there. And that is how you add grain to digital images, and I hope you enjoyed the tutorial. My name is Paul Cairns. You can visit my blog at it's Through the Photographer's Eye, and it's at paulcairns.com/blog. There you'll find other articles and tutorials. Thank you for watching. Enjoy the rest of your day. Goodbye.